cultivate an online following now. So the guys that are getting attention are the ones that are coming with next level products. An example would be Loki, who makes the poly digit, and he's said, "Oh, I'm gonna turn the whole thing into a touchscreen, and I'm just gonna have it's a computer in a metal box, and yeah, I'm just gonna run it all through a GUI, and that's it."
Yeah.
So there are downsides to that because there's I really gotta put this on paper one day because I think it would be an interesting thing to study. Is the technology for effects pedals, it has a breakpoint, and that breakpoint is in practicality. If you are in a band and you have to switch really quickly between effects, it's a lot quicker to turn on an analog effect, even if we're talking about just like milliseconds of loading, than a digital effect. A multi effect for sure. And you see some guys out there with the Helix board. That's a amazing piece of hardware, but you can only have a certain number of effects. You could never have a setup like you have on a Helix. It's impossible. And then even if you do, you run into to input level issues. So you're running pedals into your Helix. Well, then now you've just created a gain stage going into what is supposed to have nothing but a line signal going into it. So there's that breakpoint where technology can go too far for this particular application. But at the end of the day, a perfect example is the, do I have one? I don't. The tone print for TC Electronic.
Yep.
Amazing application of a garbage piece of technology. So that, you hold it up to the pickup and it,
Yeah.
it's a fax modem. That's all it is. So they're using old technology that would have been considered cutting edge in the 80s to make a new product. And I think the applications for something like that are huge, but it has to be practical because you can't do that on the fly.
Yeah, that's very true. And I mean, we talked, well, it was in one of the quick 10 questions about digital analog and so forth, and there's a huge push towards digital modeling and things like that. From a practicality basis, it's easy to transport digital gear and things like that. I mean, I quite recently bought the Boss was a tube amp expander, and it sounds fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the digital sounds you get today, it does sound fantastic. That said, my personal preference is more towards analog sounds. I just love analog. There's something about it, isn't it? Especially with valve amps and things like that. If you're driving a valve amp, the sound is just bliss. And I don't think we're quite yet there with technology to replicate that sound in its truest sense, and not just the sound but the feel as well.
I would definitely agree. There are some JFETs that are very, very, very similar to a tube profile, but until you add several in succession, it doesn't sound very similar. For example, there's I'm trying to think of the company, Quilter. Quilter makes some great product. It doesn't sound the same, it doesn't feel the same, but it is a different style of tube sound. And the whole head is maybe yay big, and that's the whole thing, as opposed to I see you've got a rock reverb in the background. But that thing's heavy. It's heavy.
Oh, it weighs a ton.
Yeah, but there's also something romantic about having that large amp head that you bring with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking because it was just recently repaired. I took it to a new an engineer that I've never used before, and we were talking about the weight of chassis and the weight of materials and the transformers and everything. For me, it's probably a load of nonsense, but for me, when I pick up the amplifier and it's nice and weighty, it gives me that feeling that it's of quality, and it's be a load of nonsense, but it's
Do you
just,
remember?
it
Do you
gives that
remember in
reassurance to me.
you remember in Jurassic Park? You know, the kid reaches in the back and picks up the binoculars,
Yeah,
and Dr. Malcolm says, "Oh, you know, what did you pick up? You know, does it feel heavy? That means it's expensive. Put it down."
yeah.
You know, it's the exact concept.
It is, isn't it? And I think it links in as well to our when we look at pedals, and you said earlier when you see the artwork, and it's like you focus on that artwork, and it sets those triggers off, and it doesn't matter what else is on the board. You just
Yeah,
want to know
that
about
one thing.
that one thing and that one pedal. Yeah, I'm very much like that, and I think a lot of us, not everybody, I think a lot of us are like that for sure. So what are some of your favorite builders, pedal board builders at the minute?
I'm a lot like you. I like things that are visibly, or it's like putting your packaging on the shelf. Things that are visibly appealing. I want to investigate and see what they've got. One guy who I've become pretty decent friends with online is Lollygagger FX. So Sean over there, I mean, he's taking woodworking, phenomenal woodworking, and making some beautiful product. And it does some really interesting. It makes some interesting sounds.
Mm.
He has a product called the Cherry Box that does something similar. I haven't really asked him how he's doing it, but it does something pretty similar to what the Clockwork does, where it'll kind of sound like it's about to fall apart. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's going to shake itself to death. But I like guys that think of interesting ways to market products that have been out for decades, and I think Lollygagger's done a great job of his aesthetics.
Mm. Yeah, I'm the same. There's a pedal builder who I admire at the minute. He does a lot of steampunk type of designs of enclosures. That's Spy Sound, and
Yeah, another really good example.
it just is in it just every time he posts something, it's just intriguing. I just want to know more about the product and the pedal and what it sounds like, based purely on what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and we're in a really nice time at the moment with a lot of pedals that are available for sure. You know, it's not just about the sound anymore or the build quality. It's about
You got to market. Yeah, it's got to be
what it
sexy.
looks like. It's
You
got
know,
to be sexy.
a Lamborghini doesn't look like a pickup truck for a reason. You know, it's
Uh,
that's it.
absolutely, absolutely. And lastly, the sub music you're listening to now, your last 5 records. What are you listening to?
Let's see. I've got them. I've got them behind me. Hang on. Let me grab
Yeah,
what I'm currently listening
sure.
to. Let's see what I've got. Because
you've
I
got
usually
old,
get
you've got
I
old
usually
school vinyl. I like that.
half of it's my dad, so don't give me too much credit. And I'm too lazy to put things away, but I actually do have
Yeah.
5 here.
Now I'm
3
hoping
interesting
there's some
ones.
Santana and Zappa in there.
Actually, the first one is Barboletta, Santana Barboletta, which is probably my favorite Santana album. And also, it's when they figured out how to do foil artwork for albums. It was kind of the it was in an interesting changing time period for printing process, because when a lot of these came out, it was black and white, and that was it. So when people started to figure out how to do foil graphics, which they actually stole this concept from gum manufacturers, chewing gum manufacturers. That's when you start to get a lot of really interesting artwork. So I really like this one. The next one is
What is it? What is it you like about Santana? I mean, I love Santana.
it's a Latin interpretation of American style rock and roll.
Yeah,
You know, or British style rock and roll also. You know, you guys were the founders of a lot of the sounds that influence everyone.
you know, Greg Campbell of Angry Tones It
Riff
was,
clips.
yeah,
Yeah.
riff clips. I was talking to interviewing him, and he said exactly the same about Britain being the founders. And but I look at it the other way. I think America is the founder of, or if you go back to the 30s and 40s, where the where blues started off, likes of Son House and all those people, and then that influenced Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and then she influenced Keith Richards, and then he influenced, and it goes on and on and on,
Yeah.
But the founding, I think, is traditional Delta blues.
Yeah, I guess if you go back far enough in time, the blues would have been a southern United States type of creation. Um, but being able to put the razzle dazzle to it, that was the the Brits did a good job of really making it into a show,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
spectacle, so to speak.
And before we go on to your next album, which sort of British artists and guitarists do you like?
I own more. I think I have every single Led Zeppelin album, but I have I think it's actually in here if I look. Yeah, I have In Through the Outdoor by Led Zeppelin, and I got a couple that actually have the original brown bag that it came in.
Yeah,
So Zeppelin's huge, huge for me, absolutely huge.
me too. Me too. Their sound's just phenomenal, wasn't it? So, but
So I actually have one of my, let's see, I have all of the variants of In Through the Outdoor by now. So the people that don't know, this has a little bit of history behind it. Every single one of the covers for the Into the Outdoor has a different point of view of the same scene, and I believe there's 6 different covers.
right.
And when you bought them in the store, they came in these brown paper bags, so you didn't know. See, it just says Into the Outdoor.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have actually known which one you were going to get until you bought it. And another thing that was kind of interesting that a lot of people didn't know until after the fact was it came with the inner sleeve. The inner sleeve is black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And until you spill your beer on it or until you spit on it, you wouldn't have known that it's actually a watercolor. So
Ah,
if you were to get it wet, it would actually reveal the colors on this. So I have a few of these. I've got all of the different variants, I believe. I've got a few with the original bags. I've got a few with uncolored sleeves, and I've got a few with colored sleeves. So a little bit of vinyl history and Led Zeppelin history. They were pioneers of turning mundane things into a fantastic idea.
yeah.
So I really admire that.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that you there's a story behind the sleeves, and it's watercolor and things like that. And I mean, the majority of my record collection, it's CDs. But in the CDs, you get artwork, and in the artwork, you get all the notes about the musicians on the album. And I mean, very often I would buy an album, and then I'd have a look and see, that drummer's drummed for Eric Clapton, so I'd want to then find out about that drummer, and then
Yeah.
find out about, that drummer's he's actually played drums for this artist. Let me go and find out about. So for me, having that physical product of a CD or a piece of vinyl, an artwork, it led me on to discover new artists, discover new music. And I think you lose that somewhat with some of the digital media. I mean, I rarely listen to CDs now. All my collection it's digital
It's
download.
digital. Yeah.
That's what I listen to these days. And digital downloads, it's great. It's practical. You can listen to music on the go. Wherever you are. And I love it. But you do lose that storytelling that you've shown with the brown paper bag, and you just lose it, don't you?
I definitely agree with that. And I'm audio quality is obviously important, but I'm not going to be one of the ones that will pretend that an album that's been bounced around in the back of somebody's truck and in and out of milk crates for 40 years is better quality than digital, because I'm probably gonna make some people mad here. It's really not.
Hmm.
If you buy a brand new one, and you throw it on your turntable, well, then what kind of cartridge do you have? What kind of speakers do you have? Because I'm still arguing that your digital is just as good, if not better, than your vinyl. But for me, it's more about the ritual. The ritual of music is
Yeah.
warming up the standby on my amp, picking the guitar, making sure it's in tune. It's the ritual of taking the vinyl and putting it on top, and I want to go into the back and read the lyrics and see if there's anything. What am I feeling today? Let me look at the artwork that they put in there.
Yeah.
And with digital, you don't get any of that. You
Yeah.
really don't. When's the last time? If you want to look up lyrics, you have to Google them now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And also, does it have a knock-on effect to other industries, in the fact that I wonder if photographers have lost business because of digital work, because there's not so much, or printing companies and things like that. I wonder if it's had a knock-on effect to other industries.
I guarantee it would. That being said, when you see a film that is actually shot on film, and your brain is trying to figure out why it looks different, but you maybe can't pinpoint why, it's because the director insisted on shooting it on film versus doing it in IMAX or in digital.
Yeah.
But they also don't really popularize a lot of that unless it's something that's really noir, and they're trying to say, oh, I filmed this with an original, 1956, blah 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 blah. In which case, then it's kind of, you're taking it to snobbery level, but I really think that there's something special about big old hardware, like CDs and like your old Walkman. It was just something, you have a relationship with that hardware.
Yeah, absolutely. So what other albums have you got there?
Let's see. Probably the least interesting one here, another one that my dad used to love, was Little Feat.
Oh yeah.
So Waiting on Columbus is probably my favorite Little Feat album. If you were unfamiliar with these guys, which I'm sure a lot of guys are not unfamiliar with Little Feat, I think they are akin to the Grateful Dead before the Grateful Dead. Kind of like a jam band style, or freeform rock and roll is what I would kind of classify them as.
Yeah.
So that's another one that's always been kind of big for me. I have a lot of Little Feat albums as well. Their artwork is also pretty interesting. So if you want to look at some of those, they go a little wild with theirs.
Yeah.
I'm saving the best one for last.
Oh, excellent.
I have an original white label promo of Queen the Game.
Oh wow.
So this was a first edition of this. This was my mom's. And this has always been one of my favorites. They use the same style. You can see the reflective foil.
Yeah.
And it's just a fantastic album. You never get tired of this one.
You can never get tired with Queen. Superb band. I grew up listening to Queen. My mum and dad, again, were huge Queen fans. So I got introduced to the sounds of Queen from my parents.
Yeah. Definitely the same here. What's interesting is she used to work at a radio studio, and back in the day, you would get samples and you would have to advertise to get on the air. And so before things became mixed into the shuffle of, oh, hang on, we're going to put this in the pile of albums that we're going to play during the day, they would get these promotional copies. So this was actually a promotional copy that didn't make it onto
wow
into the collection of the record store. So it's not the most valuable album, but it's valuable to me because it's got cool history behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a band. Have you seen the Queen album, the Queen film?
I have. Yeah.
What did you
definitely
think?
Have. I think it's probably similar to the what's Rocket Man, the
Elton
kid
John.
Rocket Man. I'm sorry, for some reason I wanted to say something different, but yeah, they had the Elton John movie, and you wonder how much of that is historical and how much of that is adjusted for film.
Yeah.
Like we know Freddie Mercury was way over the top. But to what degree are they sensationalizing some of the details? And also, how do they know all those details?
Yeah.
How do they really know?
Yeah, well, apparently I had Brian May and others were in the band were helping them to make the film, but
Those guys
it's
were high the whole time. How do they know? How do they remember what was going on?
that's a fair point. The I remember when Bohemian Rhapsody came out, and we had a TV show in the UK called Top of the Pops, and it was a big show at the time in the UK, and it was always shown on the TV on a Thursday evening, and in the media before the Thursday's episode of Top of the Pops, it was all in the news about what new songs were going to be enriched. So John Lennon's Imagine, for example. So there was a lot of media talk about John Lennon was going to release Imagine, and it was going to be on Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
So you all used to sit around the TV as a family
And wait for it.
And wait for it. And I remember the hype around Bohemian Rhapsody, and it was always, the first thing is it was a big musical thing, and it was over, you know, the standard 3.5 minutes, but also it was new video technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I can remember sitting around with my family watching that. We was like, wow, this is so incredible. The face is popping up, you know, with all the shadows, you know, on half of the face and stuff. It was cutting edge back then.
It really was. And that's why I'm going to go back to the whole concept of the spectacle, you know, turning arts into production. I really do have to credit, you know, the UK with figuring out how to make that marketable. Especially, you know, nowadays, the volume of content that's coming out, I might say, hey, have you ever heard of this song? And you might not have even heard of that band, just because they come out so quickly now.
Yeah.
And they have a very steep peak of popularity, and then they're gone, you know, in a couple months.
Yeah.
Versus, I can't wait for the next album from Queen to come out, or I can't wait until they're going to premiere this on VH1 or whatever. And I think that's, yeah, sadly, there's a lot less of that these days.
Yeah, and I think because everybody's promoting the work online as well, there's I think there was less choice back in the 70s and 80s of bands and who you could listen to, you know.
Yeah.
But now the world literally is you get so much available, and you can tap into artists and musics from all corners of the world.
That would be an argument pro digital, because the barrier to entry for producing music back in the day was, I mean, you had to have a full blown studio. You got to have a quiet room. You got to have all the rack studio gear, and monitoring and a mixing board. And now you can do all that digitally with a laptop.
Yeah.
So, you know, guys that, you know, Post Malone, he produced his first album by himself in his, you know, in his house, which you could never do that in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. You know, that's something that's exclusive to this generation.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's interesting to see where it's all going, and it's all happening all very fast as well, isn't it? So all the changes and everything.
It's hard to keep up with, but it's, you know, it's exciting when you see somebody do something creative with new technology.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Well, Michael, thank you so much for giving us your time.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting talking to you and getting to know you and about what you do, and the background of Tone Tuga, and some of your musical inspirations as well. It's been absolutely lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been great hanging out. You know, thanks so much for having me on. I always love, you know, just being able to chat with people about music. So, you know, hey, anytime you wanna do this again, let me know.
Excellent, super. Well, Michael, thank you very much, and you have a great rest of the week. And I'll speak to you online sometime soon.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
See you again.
All right, bye.
See you. Bye.